Welcome back, CSC 121 class, to EX29 Tip Calc with tkinter. And the inter's already done, so you're just kind of learning how to put this together a little bit and just kind of identify parts of your interface. So what we're going to do here, we already did the top part where we make this thing go up and down. Now we're just going to do the calculate part and display information down here. And the very last thing we'll do is we'll make sure that they put something in here or display something to make it kind of prompt you to put a number in there. So what I'll do here is we're going to need another function, and we're going to call this one Calc. And I'll just work my way through it. I won't even look at the code I did last time. Hopefully we'll just kind of think it through. And what we're going to do here is we're going to want to first get the value we have from that other box. So we're going to need to get this again. So I'm even going to use this again. So I can take this first and put this here, because we're going to still need that value. We'll still call it t again. So we're still going to get the value, that whatever the closing value when we made it go up or down, we're going to get that value in there. And I'll still make sure that it's an integer, just in case it isn't. I'll make sure that it's an integer. Whether we need that or not, it will not hurt. And then what we're going to do with t is we're going to have to multiply it by our meal amount. Now we also have to get our meal amount. So let's do one where we get the meal amount. And that is going to be ent1. And I'll just call it meal just to make it easy, because we don't want to use m because we already have m as our root. And we're going to get the meal amount from there. And then you can also, we could do this. You could just do a float like that. I think that'll work. That way you could be sure that it's a float, because you might put in something, a meal amount that has dollars and cents in there. So we're going to make sure that's a float right off the bat, instead of doing it as a separate one. We could have done it separately, but we'll throw the float right in there, and we're going to get from ent1. And then what we're going to do next is just do a little calculation here, and we could just call it, tip amount meal, and we'll multiply it by t, and that's also going to be multiplied by 0.01. So we could even put that in parentheses if that makes sense. So we're going to take our meal and we're going to multiply it by the tip, whatever the percent is. So this will kind of get our tip amount. So you can do divide it by 100, or you could multiply this by 0.01, whichever one you want. So it's basically taking the meal times whatever. So this converts it to a percent is what it's doing. So we're going to take the meal amount from here. So whatever it is, $100 times 0.25, it'll come out to 25. So we have a tip amount, and that's what's actually going to go in this little box here that we can't even see yet. And then, and again, we don't have everything done here, but then what we're going to do is finally, we're going to have a thing called total, and we're going to say total equals meal plus tip amount. And we'll see if that works, because that should be all we need so far. Now, it's not going to be formatted correctly just yet. Total, and also what's going to happen is tip amount's going to go in that ent, I think it's 3, and total is going to go in ent4. So we still have to do all that first before we do anything else. So let's just check this out. Make sure that that's ent3 is our tip amount, ent4 is our total meal and tip. So we're going to put those together. So it looks like we have everything. You know, the math isn't that hard for what we're doing here. But now what we're going to do is we're going to say ent3, and we'll delete just to wipe it out. And we'll do this each time. We'll just put 0 end, and this will be ent4, and this will be ent3. And this time I'll do insert, and it'll be from 0 to tip amount. It'll start there, so it'll show the tip amount in there. And then this one, I'll just copy this, because this will be insert, and this will go from 0 to total. So what these are doing is these are just inserting everything in these two fields that are here, these two fields here. So they're just going to put them in there. So tip amount will go here, and total will go there. That's what should happen after it calculates this stuff up here. But it won't look right yet, but let's just see if it works first. And one thing we do need is we need another button event on the calculate button, which should be button 1, 2, 3. It should be button 3. And we're just going to say command equals calc. So we just have to go find button 3 in our code, button 3, and I can just copy this and put it here on button 3 and say command equals calc, because that's all I called it. And we should be able to try it out. And I'll put in 100, and maybe I'll put this up to 25, and I'll hit calculate. And it goes 25.0 and 125.0, and that's actually right, except it's just not formatted as as dollars and cents. So we just will have to kind of output a little string to do that. So we could easily fix that. So we're almost done with this part. So that actually works. I didn't try any others, but I'm assuming that works okay. And we're just going to go back up to our function up here. And all that we have to do is just kind of change tip amount and change total. Now you could do it all together instead of adding more lines of code, but sometimes I think it's easier, just so you know what you're doing, to kind of do this separate and just reassign it. So I'm going to say tip amount equals, and then I'm going to do an F string. So I'll do F and then quotes, and I'll just say tip amount. And tip amount has to be, and actually I'm going to put a $sign first, and then this has to be in curly brackets. And then I think also in the curly brackets is going to be :.2f. I think is going to make that appear like money, the :.2f. And we could check the other one, but I'm pretty sure that's okay. And then what I'll do is I'll just copy this, and I'll do it for total. So I'm reassigning these values, which is kind of redundant, but at least we kind of know what we're doing here. As you're learning this, you know that this is just kind of is going to output it as an actual, it'll actually be a string then, but it'll be with a $sign in it, and it'll look like money. So we'll do that, and we'll just see what happens here. So I'll hit stop, and I'll run it again. And I'll just put in 100, and I'll make it 25 again. I'll make it 30, something different. And I'll hit calculate, and it didn't work. So I did something wrong here. I'm getting float and string, so I'm doing something. It's probably when I made it into a string that it's doing math after it, so I have to fix that. And the problem is here we're doing math after we converted it to a string, so this should just be moved. So we're going to move this, because remember you can't do math on a string, and we converted it to a string before we did this. So you should do all the math first, and then make sure everything outputs as a string, and then it just outputs with these commands here. So now that should work. And I'll try 100, and I'll hit my little button here, make it go up to 30, and it should be $30 tip amount, and the bill should be 130. And there it is. So that works. So the only other thing that we'd have to do in here is just, if they didn't put anything in here, and basically just put a little if statement saying if this thing is empty, enter amount. We could just do something like that. So that could be just as easy. I'll just do this quick. Well, actually, here's an issue. If we got it from here, we wouldn't want the float in there, because it'll try to be converting a float to nothing. So we might have to change this. So let's just try this. Let's just say if meal equals nothing, empty string, then in ent1 we're going to do like an insert. Remember, we'll indent it, and we'll say ent1 insert, and we'll just put a string here. I'll just put enter amount, something real short, because I don't have a very long field there. So we can't put a big message, and we're not going to do like an alert window or anything like that. We're just going to do that. We're going to say if meal equals that, and then what I'll have to do here is get this float out of here, and then once it's okay, this is not part of, and I'm not doing an elif or anything, or an else or anything. I'm just going to say meal equals float. I'll just float the meal variable, so we could do math with it, and that it can take decimals and things like that. So this is only if nothing's in there. But now what's going to happen is we should get that. So we're getting that, and then we're converting it to a float, so we could do some math with it, especially if there's dollars and cents in there, and that should be okay. So let's try it out. I'm getting invalid syntax. Oh, I see what I did. I have an extra parentheses in there. Sometimes if you're looking at your error and thinking, I did that perfectly, what's wrong with it? Always look at the line before it. And here I have an extra parentheses here. So that should be the problem, I'm assuming. So let me run this one more time. All right, so after all that, the very last thing I'm doing will not show up in Repellent. I'm not surprised. All right, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go here. I'm going to close this up. I'm going to go to VS Code, and I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call it ex29. I'll call it v for my video.py. I'll put that in there. I'll make a new file. There it is. I'll paste all the stuff in here that I just did. Paste all my code in here. And then I'll go down here and I'll run it. I have to put in Python 3, and there it is. And I'll put in nothing, and I'll hit calculate, and it says enter amount. And you will get a little error there, but that's okay. And then if you put in 100, and I hit calculate, it's going to work. And you can keep doing it over. Calculate, it still works. So that works. So for whatever reason, the last part of this didn't work in Repellent, but it actually worked good for most of the video, so at least I'm surprised with that. It's just the last part. So that's EX29. If you did it in VS Code, you could copy your code and then put it in a Repel, or if you didn't repel it, you could just share me the repel it. Either way, share me the repel it, and that's fine. So that's our EX29.